Welcome to the Lit Marriage Podcast with authors and Christian relationship coaches Cassidy and Daniela Parlane. On this podcast, you will discover how to transform your marriage from autopilot mode to keeping the flame of purpose, passion, and romance lit in the marriage that God designed for you to have. Learn to love intentionally together. Are you ready to keep it lit? Here we go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Lit Marriage Podcast. We are your hosts, Cassidy
And Daniela.
And today, folks, before we go any further, we wanted to just come out and just say how much we missed you. It's been a while since we have put out a podcast. I mean, we've been absent for
a minute.
Yeah, for some time now. And, you know, we've had to just sort of take some time away from podcasting and make sure that our family is fully in order.
Sometimes you just have to do that.
Absolutely.
You need to take that time and kind of
reassess.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And re-strategize. And so now it's 2022. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
And, you know, we just want to just really thank God for everything that He's done in our lives. And we know that great things are coming for your lives this year in 2022. Today, we want to talk to you on the subject of parenting in 2022. This is something that we have had to contend with ourselves, right, Daniela?
That's right.
So there are, I would say, a plethora of factors that when we talk about parenting in general that we have to consider. I know right now, because of all of the restrictions and everything that's going on in the world, people have had to reconstruct.
That's right. They've had to reassess, reevaluate,
right,
reconfigure.
Yes.
There's been a lot of readjustments going on, and even just due to the unpredictability of things since 2020, where people were expecting things to go back to normal.
Right.
It seems as though not much has changed. So as you can imagine, that has a huge impact on people's livelihood and how they do life in general. And especially when it comes to parenting, you know, there are people that are used to their children being in school full time.
Right.
You know, there's like two working parents, and all of a sudden there's been an interruption. And it's once in a while interruptions happen, but when it becomes consistent over 2 years, it's time to really, you know, reconsider how you need to readjust your lifestyle, which was why we wanted to focus on the topic of parenting.
Absolutely. So what are some of the issues that people are having to sort of adjust their lives to currently that you see out there?
Well, one thing that it doesn't impact us obviously directly because we homeschool our kids. We've mentioned that in previous episodes. It doesn't really affect us directly, but we've been in contact with so many other parents and get so much feedback. And one of the main feedbacks that I've been seeing and getting is how often there's just so much instability with the school system, right? Like, you know, for instance, after the new year, parents were expecting their children to go back to school, everything back to normal, but instead they were faced with new restrictions where, your kids can't come back for a couple weeks. Right. And this seems to be kind of a recurring thing. And one of the common complaints I've heard from parents is how when the kids are at home, online learning seems to be getting a lot of negative feedback. Yeah. Seems to be getting a bad rap. Kids are not happy with it. They're not learning as well as they used to in the regular classroom kind of setting. Right. They're getting depressed. They feel isolated. They feel alone. So this is kind of something we wanted to focus on today because being homeschoolers ourselves.
Yeah.
And we were homeschooling way before this whole adjustment happened.
Right.
Pretty much since our babies were born, and they're 5 and 6. So we haven't really we weren't really impacted that much we haven't had to transition much on the parenting side of things.
Right.
But we can share some things that we've been doing that has really been working for us. And one key thing I can say that for sure children need is consistency. And I think that's what's really lacking right now in this new world kind of environment that we've been thrust into.
So our parents, if I'm getting what you're saying clearly, they're not adjusting to these changes, or they're forced into accepting these changes.
That's right.
And it's interrupting the flow of their lives, maybe financially, economically, whatever,
And even emotionally and psychologically, not just the parents, but the children.
Right.
And you can imagine if you have a child who's suffering, it's going to impact you as the parent.
Right.
Right? Because our children mean everything to us. And as a result, this causes a snowball effect, and it affects the relationship in the home, the marriage. Right? So we want to do everything we can to, just provide some healthy tips.
Right. To
really try to curtail some of these negative impacts as much as possible.
And they are many, wouldn't you say? These impacts that are...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, on this podcast, we don't really, today we're not going to be very long on this podcast, but we really want to leave our listening audience with some practical tools that they can consider. And we know that what works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah.
Which is why we do keep that in mind. But we want people to understand that, you can always learn from someone else's experience.
Exactly.
Right?
And having mentioned that will segue into what I'm about to say, is that we're going to speak more on the homeschooling kind of side of things. And we understand that that's not everybody's flavor.
Right.
But given the fact that we're in that, we're deeply involved and experienced in that, we would like to share what we see is working. And
so... Sorry,
yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but what would be, I would say, if we could come up with maybe 3 tips that we can leave with our listening audience today, what would be one of the number one things? I know you've mentioned structure.
Structure is so important.
Yes.
And it's something, especially if you have children who tend to kind of be very active, be very, very hyper, very energetic. It is so important to have structure,
right? Because
it keeps, when children have some predictability in their schedule, it takes their anxiety levels down.
Okay.
They know what to expect. They get into a groove. So they already know, we're going to be transitioning into the next segment of the day. We know that it's lunchtime at 12 o'clock. Or when you kind of scatter things all over, it tends to create anxiety because the children don't really know what's next. They feel uneasy. And children like structure. But they crave that.
Isn't that what school does, though? School creates
structure.
Some level of structure.
Exactly.
For the kids, which is why parents, they crave the idea or to see their kids go back into the classroom. In fact, I think there is an effort right now by a particular organization out there where it is saying that we want to get the kids off the screen and we want to get them back in the classroom. I know that this might sound like the ideal thing for most parents, but unfortunately, given the circumstances that we're faced currently in our world, this isn't happening as fast as most parents would want it to. You want to speak on that?
Yes. So this is where we come in and say, if you find yourself in a position where, okay, this is a little bit crazy, where it's like one moment our children are back in school, everything seems to be going normal, then boom, another interruption. Online learning. The child is getting really distressed, really upset, feeling depressed or down. There seems to be a constant disruption There's no consistency. The
Right.
structure is just lacking. Why not consider as an option to maybe introduce homeschooling if that is something that is feasible? And what homeschooling can offer. And I know it sounds right off the bat, when people hear homeschooling, they think they instantly have to become a professor or something.
Right.
And I'm here
But
to
do
tell
they?
you that no, you do not. You do not, especially if you're starting out with young kids.
Right.
There's a lot less pressure. However, you can start really at any level. But the good thing about homeschooling is there are so many resources. Now that we're all connected to the online world, resources are at your fingertips. Anywhere there are homeschooling communities,
Yeah.
you can share information. You can even connect with other fellow homeschoolers
Right.
in your area. You can kind of run ideas by each other. There are so many things you can do there. And it's a good idea to, especially if the children are not benefiting from just sitting online staring at a screen.
Right.
It's very important to try to get them those actual physical books.
Right.
And they're not
Gone
expensive.
are those days, right, where you get to flip through the pages and feel the actual book.
Yes. And you know what? That's really good. We find that children really enjoy that. Our kids really enjoy the idea of having a physical book to flip through and let them feel, they're using their five senses again. Right. So there are so many materials, and the good thing about homeschooling is you can completely tailor it as much as you want. You can go with whatever the school, your public school or whatever school you take them to is already offering. You can get those kinds of curriculums, or you can choose from an abundance. And especially, we know that our audience is broadly Christian.
Right.
You can even choose a Christian curriculum.
What are some curriculums out there?
I know that there's one called ACE.
Okay.
Like ACE, I believe it's spelled. There's one called, I'm not too familiar with a lot of them, but Becca is another one that I've heard about. And there is one called Sun Life that I had looked into, and I believe it's spelled SON, like Son, the Son of God, life.
Right.
And there are so many others. And if you're concerned about all, the shock factor of, oh my goodness, it's going to cost money.
Right.
I'll alleviate your stress right now by telling you it's not very expensive, but if even, if you're kind of strapped for cash and you're kind of thrown into the situation, there are free homeschooling materials online. You can look up free homeschooling, free Christian homeschooling curriculum. There's just so much out there. Like I said, you can join Facebook groups, just so many resources.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, if this is something you're even considering, or you might be, you want to kind of think about maybe even for the future, if you think this is the direction you might be heading, start doing that kind of research now by joining a community of homeschoolers, because they've done it before you and they have so much knowledge and wisdom to share. A lot of them even share their materials that they no longer use. Some of them give them away for free, and some of them sell them for a fraction of the price they paid.
Wow.
So that is definitely valuable. And the other thing I was going to mention is that aside from the, not sticking to purely online learning, you're doing books. The benefit of homeschooling is you can actually teach just real life skills
and values.
Yeah. Like to kind of fit your schedule. Yeah. So for instance, today happened to be a snow day for us in Ontario, where we are. And for us, it's still a regular learning day for our children. They still had the regular class time, but then we went outside and we spent over an hour just playing in the snow, just having fun.
Letting the kids be kids.
They could build structures. And then a simple idea, one of the things we frequently do is we incorporate real life into our learning. So we will come back inside, and maybe watch a program on...
Parallelogram is not It's not a life skill that we need to know.
It's not. So you could come in and like even look up something even on YouTube and like how is snow formed, or all about snowflakes, or about winter, and make it into a learning experience. You can make learning fun. You're not confined to just the curriculum itself.
Right.
You can pick and choose, you can add or subtract, and that's the beauty of homeschooling.
One other thing I wanted to touch on quickly, you mentioned, I think we both kind of said it together, was the values that you're able to instill in your children. Because
absolutely. This
is something that parents do not get a whole lot of time to do when the kids are in a regular school structured system.
Yeah, where there's one teacher to like 20 or 30 children.
Right.
They don't always have the time to really instill much
values
into them.
Right.
A lot gets overlooked.
And even if your child has behavioral issues, it's easy for a teacher to diagnose that child with something, that could easily be fixed based on nutritional things that you could implement, like, reducing sugar out of that child's life.
Yeah, sometimes that's all it is. It's something that, it could be something that's simple, that's being overlooked, like maybe their diet.
Right.
Take away some of the sugar drinks
Candy.
And replace it with water, fruits and vegetables rather than, junk food.
And
chips.
Just really sticking with values. This is one thing that you can, as a parent, it's one of the only things that you can truly give to your kids that will either stick or not stick for the rest of their lives. Morals and values. And as Christian parents, we are faced and bombarded, really, with all sorts of challenges, even in the public school systems, as it were. And so we're having to contend with reteaching our kids when they come home.
That's right.
Many parents.
Unlearning.
Right?
Yes.
So one of the main benefits, I would say, and we'll leave this with you today, is that you are able to instill real godly, just pure values and morals in your kids. And just pray to God that they stick. There are so many challenges that our kids are facing in an online world, and if we can impact their lives in a significant way by instilling values. So by homeschooling, you literally get to see that kid all the time. And I know that some parents out there, they're like losing their minds right now, wanting to pull every strand of hair out of the head. But when you think about the fact that God placed these children in your life as an investment, they are an investment. And, there's no greater time in history that our kids need strong, godly values and morals. And
you have that opportunity to inject that into just daily lessons. Like, for example, today, one of the things that we learned, or the children learned about, was about the rainbow. And something that simple, I was able to give them a short lesson that they for sure would not have gotten in public school.
Right.
We started talking about, in the Bible, where was the first time that the rainbow was mentioned?
Right.
And so forth. So you can find little moments like that where you can inject some Bible and principles and Bible stories.
Absolutely.
And teach them kind of just life lessons along the way.
Absolutely.
And those things may seem really small, very insignificant, but they actually are very significant.
Some of the scriptures that I still remember to this day are from Sunday school. Mm-hmm. Some of the scriptures that I still remember and know and are able to recite, like verbatim, were when I was a child. And the Bible talks about from you were a child, you knew the Holy Scripture. So there's something about not just instilling education from the secular standpoint, but even spiritual education this could truly revolutionize the life of your children. And I think if there's anything that we can really leave with our listening audience today, is to really strive to be that example in your kids' lives and be able to, allow God to speak through you to them, because they are being bombarded from left, right, and center, from the cartoons to the different things that they're watching. So many things are vying for their attention, their little minds. And so it is so important.
And their peers, especially their peers. And that's another thing that as a homeschooler, you would have a lot more control over. Is you are there, their environment is more controlled.
And you get to choose their friends.
Exactly.
You're part of the process in choosing who their friends are, because now they understand who, the caliber of friendships that they need to develop in these challenging times. Yeah,
so really it is, what we're saying in a nutshell is that this is a great investment in your children, and our children are our greatest investment.
Absolutely.
That's our mindset. And so, yes, it may seem like a tall order.
Yeah. Or an inconvenience right now.
It could seem like an inconvenience.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we assure you that this is something, if you do choose to take this route of homeschooling, it is definitely something you will not regret.
Absolutely.
You will not regret it. There may be days that are difficult, especially with the younger ones.
Yeah.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
But you will get through it. And again, there are support systems out there that you can connect with.
I just want to leave this encouragement with somebody that God's grace is sufficient.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing that you cannot accomplish. If you feel like you're inadequate, if you feel like, this is way over your head, if this is challenging your marriage in any way, maybe this is a challenge that this is one challenge that I think is a great challenge for our marriages out there to take on, and beat. We can beat the challenges of our time, and there are many. And so I want to tell you that God's grace is sufficient, and that He will give you the grace that is required and the know-how in order to raise your children in these very difficult times. I think this was yet another very productive talk that we are having with you, our listeners today. We encourage you, if you have not already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to our socials. If you want to find out more information about who we are, what we do, what we offer, please go ahead and visit our website at makeyourmarriagegreatagain.ca or whatloveisnot.ca for more information and what we can offer you in these very challenging times in your marriage, in your home, whatever it is. All right. God bless you. Until next time, keep it
lit.
God bless.